within our group who are very active, that go to the local meetings, that talk to our elected officials, that do research and find out what's going on. So we need help though, because it's a big job. There's so many things coming at us. It's like a tidal wave. So we need as much help as we can get. So again, I just encourage you, attend the meetings, get involved, go to the local meetings, you know, talk to your elected officials.
First Thursday.
First Thursday every month here, 7 o'clock.
As we know, now there's a VIP issue process for concealed carry permits. Is there anything in any of this that requires the same amount of training and licensing for those people?
Good question. He asked if there was there were VIP handgun permits being issued, and if there's any requirement for training for those people. I believe they are introducing a training requirement, or want to introduce a training requirement for handgun permits, and it will apply to everybody apparently, or should. Although the training now, it depends on what you apply for your handgun permit for.
Well, my understanding that for legislators and friends of, I call it the VIP program.
Yeah.
I mean, you just fill out the forms and you get the permit without any training of any kind.
Now, of the General Assembly in Annapolis, and we've done Freedom of Information requests on this, 2 have handgun permits. Only 2. So only 2 have taken advantage of it. Security guards need training. I actually have a handgun permit. I'm a physician, so I have proximity to narcotics. They didn't even ask.
Not training.
Didn't even ask if I'd ever fired a gun.
I don't think it's required on a website. I looked at it across the country of different states, and it's shocked me that if you get that far to get a permit, I don't think you've got to have training in Maryland.
Florida, you do. You don't have a permit.
Well, in Maryland, my basic question is, will it apply to everyone equal?
It should.
The other gentleman over here.
Just wanted to touch on what this gentleman said about the Sheriff's Association. There is a petition going across the country that the sheriffs are signing up with, where they will protect the citizens and their Second Amendment right. I believe it's New Mexico, 50 county sheriffs have already signed up for it. It actually started in California or Oregon. It came from the West Coast coming east.
Right.
Sheriff Chris in Sussex County, Delaware signed up. Bucks County Sheriff signed up. Pennsylvania. I haven't heard anything else.
Constitutional Sheriff's Association. Well, that's the problem, because you've got most of the states and the federal government, so you have Department of Homeland Security going to send their people in to seize your guns. It's already happened at least twice.
And then that's when it gets dangerous.
They will not recognize federal.
I understand that, but that means that our sheriff has to send his deputies out to my house when I call up and say, Department of Homeland Security is trying to confiscate.
Oh, they're not going to do that.
I'm just saying. Well, that's fine, but if the sheriff isn't going to agree to it.
That's the problem.
Okay? And so far, our sheriff has not agreed to take a position on this.
They swore an oath to the lobby. They didn't swear an oath to you. When they say I swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States against any enemies, foreign or domestic, no, they didn't mean that. What they meant is the lobbies. That's who they're going to protect. It's their money.
Sheriffs are kind of a different bunch. They're at the mercy of the voters. They're very local.
Well, there's too much state. There's too much state influence into your counties. Is the problem.
Visit your sheriff and remind him you vote.
He doesn't care because he's not running for re-election. He's there right now.
They'll have the next guy ready.
And when election time is done, he's gone.
They shouldn't care what he does.
He does not care at all about anything. I have talked to him. I've talked to him every 6 weeks for over a year about a specific problem, and he has done absolutely nothing about it.
Yes, sir.
If SB 281 passes in its entirety or in bits and pieces, does MSI have a position as far as jury nullification?
We're all in favor of jury nullification. Especially if we feel that most of this is, in fact, all of it is probably unconstitutional if you really pick it apart piece by piece.
Okay.
Some parts I think even the most rabid people are against. They wanted to do a registration scheme where we had firearms owners identification card like they had in Chicago. I don't know if you're familiar with those. It requires classroom training, live fire training, fingerprinting, a background check, and then you get your card and you can buy a gun. It would cost we figure minimum $450 to obtain the card.
And there's no firing ranges.
What's that?
You can't get qualified because there's no firing.
Correct. There's not enough instructors. We figured if all the gun owners in Maryland had to take the course, and you look, most of the instructors are part-time, it would take years.
May I just follow up?
Sure.
A friend of mine attended the Annapolis hearing yesterday and told me that MSI represented gun owners extremely well, that whomever your speaker was, he was very articulate and just did an excellent job.
That's Patrick Shomo, who
Please thank him on our behalf.
will do. Yeah, he's done a great job. He organized most of the day yesterday.
Mike?
Just on the petition process, should this thing pass, as soon as, if it passes both houses, I think as soon as it's returned to its house of origination, the process can start. Ultimately, roughly 19,000 valid signatures by the end of May, total of 55,736 by the end of June. Get it on the ballot. So.
And we need everybody here to get signatures because they knocked out, what was the percentage? Is it high as 30% sometimes? Okay, so if we go through this as we did with the other referendum drive, petition drive, we need everybody out there doing it. The other thing, senior moment, I just lost it. I didn't write it down. Okay.
Quick question for Mr. Sutton. Officer Sutton, I know you're going to run for election. What is your feelings on this whole issue? Can we get a statement from you?
Lay something down for 2 years later, right?
All right, Chris, this is your moment. Obviously I'm here, you know, and I was going to go yesterday to Annapolis to show my support because I'm a gun owner also. One thing I was telling these guys earlier, if you look at the Women's Republican Club of Cecil County last election, had a debate, and one of the questions was the Second Amendment, and it should be recorded. I'm sorry if you can't hear me, I'm just getting over the flu. And I answered my question there at the public forum of how I did support the Second Amendment. I'm not for all this, and I know it's easy to say you support it. Let's go to the sheriff's thing that everybody said these sheriffs have signed. Well, I tried to sign it, but they let me know that I wasn't the sheriff yet. So I'm not allowed to be part of that group. But I am a member of that group that likes it. So to answer the question, I think maybe this will help everybody understand where I stand, is if I was elected tomorrow, I would be one of the sheriffs on that group that signed that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, you haven't been
Where
heard.
does Maryland stand if you already have a license from another state?
Maryland recognizes no permits from other states.
Zero.
If it comes into the state, it has to be registered with the state.
Yes.
In this bill,
Can you speak up?
is the phrase good and substantial reasons.
Yes,
That's the very issue in the world.
correct.
That's decided in our favor with this phrase in this bill.
Can you repeat the question?
He asked about the Woolard case, which is on concealed carry, and the bill has the phrasing "good and substantial reason," which they have on the handgun permit process. You have to have a good and substantial reason to get a handgun permit. If the Woolard case is decided in our favor, Maryland will be de facto shall issue. They will have to be. The courts will likely give them 6 months to come up with a scheme as to how to implement that. But then
What does it do to this bill?
it would just probably strike that phrase out and leave the rest of it unscathed. Yeah. They just put a line through it.
Yeah, we can trust them.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Wouldn't affect the whole bill.
Earlier, the gentleman back here was talking about a heavy barrel HR and then the standard AR, I guess target rifle. Now, the heavy barrel is one that's considered an assault weapon.
No, the heavy barrel is, or has up until this point, been unregulated. The only difference is the contour of the barrel. There is no difference in functionality,
So
any
they're both going to be
accessories,
considered an
etc.
assault weapon.
it will be considered an assault weapon if this bill passes as of October 1st. You'll have to register.
Do they put the Mini 14 on the list?
Yeah.
Because it has the extended.
Little ranch rifle.
Yeah, that's what I have.
Then what's next?
When
do you circle the wagons? When do you draw a line in the sand? How many lobbyists could we trust?
The problem is, who's going to be the test case? Who volunteers to be the test case?
Oh, it's going to be the state of Maryland.
To go to jail first so we can fight the law.
I think
That's what it takes.
Our test cases are going to be the state of New York.
We hope.
Those people got railroaded. They don't have any grassroots organizations fighting for this. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to, when we were talking about petitions and sending things out on the internet, I work in the Bel Air District Office for Congressman Andy Harris, and I come in every morning and there's piles and piles of faxes that have been generated by the different groups, and we really appreciate it. We like the support. But Congressman Harris is A1 on the Second Amendment and is in great shape to fight it up there with his good group. So save your faxes and your work and send it to the state Democrats and to your senators here in the state of Maryland and the Democratic congressmen, because at this point in time, Congressman Andy Harris is the leader of the Republican Party for this state and stands behind you 100%.
Any other questions? Yes?
I just want to tell you what we're up against here. Last night I had a little argument with a friend of mine who's a very casual hunter. He's got a couple shotguns.
Can you speak up?
And he says, what's wrong with having to get a license to own a gun? He says, you got to have a license to drive a car. And of course I explained to him that the Second Amendment, you have a right to a gun, but driving a car is not in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. Right. And then I said, well, what if you had to get a license to go to church? You pay $100 a year to get a license to go to church. And he thought about it for a minute. He says, well, what's wrong with that? And this is a guy that knows a couple of things. I'm thinking, well, it's like I'm living in the twilight. That's what we're up against.
Well, not only is it a right, it's important to recognize it as a civil right. That term carries a whole lot more weight for God knows whatever reason than just saying it's a right. People hear that, it makes them think.
What's greater, a civil right
it's
or a
God-given right? Well, you know what though? Do we live in a secular world? Unfortunately, we do. Civil right carries a lot more weight.
If you're an honorable person,
we got to change the conversation into our favor.
Right. Paying a fee to license yourself to own a weapon is very discriminatory. I mean, how about the single woman or single guy who's got a couple of kids, has to stay home, raise them? $400 is paramount to those people. It might not be to most of you in here, but think about those people who can't afford it. All of a sudden, now, only the people who can afford to own a weapon are allowed to own a weapon. How more discriminatory can you be than this? Yet, they have the gall to say, you shouldn't have to have an ID to vote because, holy cow, you might have to pay $10 for that. But you need $400 to own a weapon to defend yourself and your children.
And that's exactly the way we've argued it. Who needs the gun the most? Probably the single mother trying to raise her kids, going to work in Baltimore City. Yeah. There's not a single shooting range on the MTA route, which is likely the way she would get there. She's not going to come up with $400. One of the senators argued, well, what's a Glock cost? $600? If she can afford a Glock, she can afford the training. Well, you know what? She's not going to buy a Glock. She's going to buy an $80 secondhand revolver.
And this will be periodically renewable.
Every 5 years.
Every 5 years. So it's not a one-shot deal. It's every 5 years you got to have $400.
But they thought of that. That's the reason why they did that. It's just like an automatic.
It's a tax.
It's a poll tax.
But it automatically, we're off the top. You eliminate all these people.
You can't tax a fundamental right.
One thing, if you're arguing this point, which I did last night, and I believe it's applicable, we always talk about what they did in Nazi Germany and et cetera, et cetera. It's happened in this country. Okay? First of all, for 80 years plus, African Americans were denied self-defense, were denied weapons, and you know what happened. You've seen enough stories, movies, whatever, lynchings, etc. They didn't have weapons. Okay, and that went up into the 60s. And that was hate groups and government. Government supported them. Okay, this could be all of us, not just African Americans. The other thing is Native Americans. The final battle wasn't a battle. They confiscated and wounded and all the weapons and then killed 297 men, women, and children. The 7th Cavalry did.
That's right.
As well as 30 of their own people because they were just firing wildly. Then on the other point is they would say, if you bring up the Second Amendment being the intent so that we have weapons that are comparable to what the people who would institute the tyranny would have, so we would say a military weapon, even though the 1934 law says we can't have automatic weapons. We had a battle in 1946, August 2nd, 1st and 2nd, in Tennessee, the Battle of Athens, where the veterans came back. They lost their right, supposedly, the way that actually this is Democrats in the county had set it up. They ran for office. They took, as usual, all the ballots and they were going to hide them and count them their way or whatever have you. And there was a battle at the sheriff's office. Lasted for overnight or whatever. So they overthrew the government effectively in that county in Tennessee. So it has happened. There's been a necessity. So it doesn't just go back to 1776 or slightly after that.
Right.
There's some modern stories about that, and we don't have to go overseas. It's happened in this country. Anything? Yes, sir.
Just dovetailing with your stories and going back to what one of the other folks brought up about the Constitutional Peace Officers Association. There have already been a number of unpublicized skirmishes between sheriff's departments in the Midwest and the West against federal law enforcement coming in and basically trying to take people's cattle and a whole bunch of different issues going on. And the upshot of those situations, which of course DC doesn't want anybody to really know, is that these local sheriffs, pretty much all of which have signed this petition, they basically ran the federal law enforcement people off.
Absolutely. And they do have the power.
And they do, because when you go back to the position of sheriff, correct me if I'm wrong, Sheriff, they came over from the old country. The sheriff legally in every county in this country, and being an ex-deputized guy myself, I know it, your sheriff is the highest law enforcement official in that county. So the sheriff legally can, and in these instances that have already occurred, have invoked their authority as the highest law enforcement official to basically tell Bureau of Land Management, FBI, and various other federal agencies hooked up with Homeland Security to A, exit the county, and B, do not come back unless you contact me, the sheriff personally, state your business, who's in your party, et cetera, and I'll approve it. If I don't approve you being in my county, your people will be arrested. I mean, this is how far this is going in some of these parts of the country.
You just answered my prayer right there.
So, Sheriff Mack started the organization. He was in Anne Arundel County 2 weeks ago. I went down to hear him speak. He's written several books. The guy's very smart.
Right.
He is what's called a constitutional sheriff, which means, contrary to what a lot of people probably don't even think about, the sheriff stands up. I, as a law enforcement officer years ago, stood up and took that oath. That oath was not to a county executive. It was not to a county commissioner. It was not to a mayor. It was to defend the Constitution.
And most people in this room have probably taken that oath in the military. You go to work for the government, you have to take that oath. And that oath, I don't know that has a limit on it, time limit.
It doesn't.
It doesn't expire. My military oath and my other oaths.
I didn't turn mine in.
Right. I didn't turn them in either.
The Constitution is the foundation that holds this whole country up.
That's how it is.
If you take the foundation out from underneath a house, it will fall. Every law we have, and if it's not deemed constitutional, it needs to be sent right straight back up there where it came from, and you can send it right straight back to the president. His executive orders don't have any power over the counties.
Well,
Well,
Executive
rule of
orders
law
are
says
not
they
law.
do.
They're not law.
Well, if we allow the courts to deem what's constitutional or not, and we follow these tyrants, that's what will happen to us. These people don't have the authority that we have in the Constitution. If we look at the Constitution for what it says, and these laws are made, clearly the Patriot Act is unconstitutional. Clearly NDAA is unconstitutional. If they believe, if you hear these kind of things created where they can come, arrest a citizen, detain you indefinitely without even a trial, how far do we go listening to these people?
No charges.
Are we not going to circle the wagons and say this is enough? You're not going any farther. This man right here, I'm going to tell you right now, you're not coming after my guns. I'm not going to trade my right for a privilege. It's my right to bear arms. It's my constitutional right to a militia for my safety. I'll get as many men around me as I possibly can. And they'll be noble men. I consider myself a saint. I love God. I swore an oath to the Constitution. And I will hold the Constitution. And I'll tell you, how far do we allow this to go? Do we not hold our people, hold them accountable? You swore an oath to the Constitution. And we're going to hold you to it. So help me God. Don't come after my guns. Don't regulate me and tell me I don't have a Second Amendment. You're not the one telling me. You're my servant. You're not my God. They may think, oh, we swore an oath to the state. Well, I'm here to tell you, the state is not God. The Constitution is the law of the land. It is the supreme law that holds this country together. And without that, it will fall.
In Delaware, I read last week, I think it's correct what I read, somebody here maybe knows better than I, the governor has taken away the arrest powers from the sheriffs.
Right, they've been doing this. This is something you need to hear right here, what this man said.
So they're working. The other thing too is realize that federal agents, they don't send 10,000 guys down to confiscate the guns. They come down to the local police and the sheriff and get their people. And that's where we can shut it down if the sheriffs and the police. Unfortunately though, the police captain or whatever chief he's a politician.
Right.
So you're better off with the sheriffs than with the local police department, say the Elgin Police Department. It's a political decision. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's the thing that if you're talking to people, make sure that they're very crystal clear on the fact that the sheriff, number one, is the top dog. No pun intended, but legally is the top dog. A police chief is an appointed politician. I've worked for sheriff, I've worked for police chiefs. Police chiefs are some of the biggest politicians I've ever met. The bigger the department, the bigger the agency, the worse it gets. And it's good for you to make sure that all your friends really understand this distinction as to the position of the sheriff. And can the feds be repelled?
Absolutely.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. You said that sheriff told them to go packing and all. But with the Patriot Act, and they're federal, they could just come and do something to the sheriff.
They don't have the authority of sheriff.
The sheriff in the one particular case, I mean, I could go through some of the litany of some of these cases because I've read all of them. But basically the sheriff said, look, you know, I'm the top dog here. The federal government, you know, my oath is not to the federal government, it's to my constituents. And when a constituent calls me and says, I have a SWAT team here and they are taking my cattle. This is an actual case. Bureau of Land Management decides they got some area, some ground that a family was using for 112 years in a written agreement with the federal government. And that agreement was that they could use a certain like 30 or 40 acres of Bureau of Land Management federally owned ground to graze their cattle in addition to their own property. Make a long story very short, no warning, no telephone calls, no nothing. SWAT team shows up, bulletproof vests, helmets, the whole 9 yards, vans back up, trailers pull up, and they start loading this family's cattle. Family says, man, what are you guys doing? Yeah, well, we got, you know, these cattle can't be here. We have authority to remove these cattle. Guy said, well, what authority? Well, we got authority, trust me. Well, when the government says trust you, you know, it's like, I'm here to help you. He the big kahuna in the family calls the sheriff. He said, Sheriff, we got a problem down here. Explains it to him. Sheriff said, try to keep him there. I'm coming right up. Sheriff gets his lieutenant, 4 or 5 deputies. They go up. They have this like Mexican standoff with this SWAT team from Bureau of Land Management. And the bottom line was the sheriff called him out. And he said, look, what's the deal? Well, you know, we're here to take these cattle. Well, for what reason? Well, we were told to come up here and take these cattle. Well, who told you? Well, our office did. Well, our office is bricks and mortar. Our office can't tell you anything. You know, you got a warrant, you have a writ. They had nothing. They had nothing. And the sheriff basically called their bluff and said, look, unless you got a warrant or a writ, you need to be letting the cattle off the trailers, packing up your stuff, taking off your SWAT hats, and hitting the trail. You know, get out of my county. So it got ugly, and the sheriff basically said, look, you know, here's how it's going to be. Now it's really irritated me. If you don't leave my county, I'm authorizing my entire department to arrest any of you found in my county. So they got in a huff, they left, the U.S. attorney called the sheriff, tried to beat the sheriff down. The sheriff said, look, you know, it is what it is. They're here illegally, they got no authority, they have no writ, no warrant, no nothing. And they got like a building, the office, telling them to come and seize cattle. This is not happening in my county. These are my constituents. I'm protecting the Constitution and I'm protecting my constituents. And this whole nexus has been involved in a number of cases, quite a number of cases already, mainly out of those states involving a whole host of issues. But it can be done, and if the sheriff locally has courage and really knows where he or she stands, you know, yeah, it's going to be tough. All these strobe lights you see on state police cars on 95, that's grant money, folks. That's grant money. I used to work with writing grants.
They're coming from China? It must be coming from China.
No, it's coming from Washington. It's called Washington Largesse. So, you know.
I guess a question and a statement. On the Woolard case, is there any feeling for a time frame as to when they might decide it? It's just still
should be in the next few months.
Next few months, okay.
Yeah.
And I guess the other thing I'll help you shamelessly promote yourself, or rather shamelessly promote you rather. Maryland shall issue is like $10 a year to join, and you know, I mean, that $10 is going to protect our rights, and you know, I would encourage everybody to consider joining.
Yeah, we are truly volunteer. We don't take any money. We don't even expense gas if we come out here or whatnot. It's all on us. Yeah. All the money goes back into doing pro-Second Amendment stuff.
I joined a few weeks ago on their website. It's painless. Took a couple minutes. And PayPal, $10.
If you don't want to join, you can still sign up and get our email alerts that'll talk to you about legislation and what's going on with us. It's either marylandshallissue.org or bluehats.org. The first guys that used to do this walked around with blue hats and they'd say, oh God, here come the blue hats. So it's stuck.
The final thing is, it would be advisable for those of us in Cecil County to write the sheriff. If he sees he's got support, he might have a position then. Right now, he probably doesn't know how many people are going to support him. And as most people, he's not going to go out on a limb and find out there's nobody behind him, or is somebody behind him cutting it off. Okay, because most of us right here don't want to be the first people arrested as the test case, and I'm sure he doesn't want to be a test case either. Jackie?
Yes, I just want to thank everyone again for coming tonight, and I want to give everyone another round of applause for I don't know if you all can see this, but I was writing down some important websites that you can go to for different things. The first one, of course, I have to put ours at the top, CecilCountyPatriots.com. We also have a Facebook site. If you have information that you come across and you want to get it out quickly, that's a good place to do it, because people are always posting things up there, things that they find out, whether it be state legislation or whatever. news stories and that sort of thing. Another one is, if this does get passed, we will be doing a petition drive, and we were very successful getting names for the DREAM Act petition, and so we're going to need volunteers. So if this does pass, please go to our website, find out. We'll probably do it once the weather gets a little warmer, of course, because it'll be at that point anyways. And last time we set up some tables on Route 40, we advertised in the paper. We had lines of people coming to sign the petition. So please consider getting involved in that. Of course, MarylandShallIssue.org. It's not .com, it's .org. Found that out. So a good place to go to get information or sign up with them. This is one that I think is new this year, and I'll leave this up here if you want to copy them down. It's www.mdleg, like watch, W-A-T-C-H, .wordpress.com, or I guess it's, .wordpress.com. And that is a new website. I found out about it through Maryland Can. This person decided to put together this website, and it puts all the information out about state legislation, dealing with like property rights, gun control, spending, all kinds of issues that concern a group like ours. And she has the information up there, what the bill is, a summary of it, a link to the bill, and also the committee that the bill will be heard in, when it will be heard. And that's the important thing, is to try to stop it in committee. Make sure it does not get out of committee. So if you go there, you can keep up with what's going on, when you need to write. It has links to the different committee members' emails, so you can send out like a blast email to go to all the committee members. And that's a really good way to stay informed about what's going on. Another place you can go if you want to contact members of a certain committee is, this one's a little bit tricky, it's http://actionmail.ksconline.net, and there you can go down and you can scroll down and it'll say like Senate, it's from the state, Senate Judiciary Committee. If you click on that, it'll have all of them there, like a form you can fill out to send everyone in that committee an email. So these are good resources. They are linked on our website, and so if you go to our homepage, I'll make sure all of these are up. I think they're all there, but I'll double check when I go home and make sure they're all there as well. And just a reminder, go ahead and get a bite before you go tonight, and I just want to thank everyone for taking the time. I know it takes time and gas money to come out. A lot of you have been working today, and it's late. So I just really appreciate you coming to this meeting, and don't forget, if you feel led to contribute to Maryland Shall Issue, and if you want to help us out with the room, put a few dollars in our thing as well. All right? Thank you so much.
There's 20 cups of coffee remaining, at least. Okay? We have the room for another half an hour, so if you want to talk to one another.